There was a time in this country when owning something meant you could open it, understand it, and fix it when it failed. An entire generation of Americans grew up with that as a basic assumption. They rebuilt carburetors in driveways, rewired kitchen appliances on Saturday mornings, and kept machines running for decades past their expected lifespan. What nobody in that generation anticipated was that the things themselves would eventually be redesigned so that fixing them was no longer physically possible. This story does not start with a broken smartphone or a locked tractor diagnostic screen. It starts with a generation that believed ownership carried an obligation. The silent generation, born between 1928 and 1945, learned to fix things because the alternative was going without. The Great Depression made repair a survival strategy, not a weekend hobby. If you could not buy a new washing machine, you figured out why the old one stopped spinning. That ethos passed directly to the baby boomers who inherited both the tools and the values. Growing up in homes where parents had survived genuine scarcity shaped a default attitude toward physical objects. You maintain what you have, and you learn how it works. Repair was not a personality trait. It was a baseline expectation of adult competence. The products of that era cooperated with this philosophy. Mid-century automobiles, washing machines, radios, and workshop tools were engineered with what designers call mechanical transparency. You could look at an engine and trace the path of fuel from the carburetor to the cylinder. Fasteners were standardized. Repair manuals shipped with the product, often including detailed instructions for adjusting timing, replacing seals, or rebuilding valve assemblies. A set of wrenches, a multimeter, and a weekend afternoon could solve most mechanical failures in an American household. Beginning in the 1980s and accelerating through the 2000s, manufacturers started replacing mechanical systems with electronic ones. That transition was not the problem. Electronics can be repaired too. The problem was the legal and design architecture that came with the shift. Modern products deploy what engineers call technological protection measures, software barriers that block the diagnostic access required to identify and fix a problem. A car's engine might be physically sound, but the computer that controls it can prevent an independent mechanic from resetting a fault code without credentials authorized by the manufacturer. The justification from manufacturers is product safety and innovation protection. The practical effect is a monopoly on repair. The most effective of these barriers is parts pairing, sometimes called digital serialization. Individual components, a phone screen, a tractor sensor, even a car battery, are cryptographically linked to the device's main logic board through a unique serial number. If you replace that component even with a genuine identical part from the same manufacturer, the device detects the serial number mismatch and disables specific functions. The repair worked mechanically. The software decided it did not count. This practice spans smartphones, agricultural equipment, powered wheelchairs, and automobiles. A man who spent 40 years keeping machines running now stands in front of a device that physically functions but refuses to operate because a software handshake failed. The hands that rebuilt transmissions and soldered circuit boards are watching a screen flash an error code that says, essentially, "You are not authorized." The automotive industry sits at the center of this shift. Manufacturers are moving toward what they call software-defined vehicles, where the engine, the suspension, the braking system, and the safety features are all controlled by centralized computing platforms. The global market for these vehicles is projected to grow from roughly $278 billion in 2025 to over $4.5 trillion by 2035. The reason is revenue structure. In a software-defined vehicle, the hardware becomes a commodity. The value moves to the software layer. Features that were once included in the sticker price, performance modes, driver assistance packages, and heated seats can now be sold as monthly subscriptions. The car in your driveway becomes a platform, not a possession. New vehicle prices averaged over $49,000 in early 2026. The American consumer is paying more than ever for a machine they are allowed to do less with than at any point in automotive history. Independent repair shop owners warned for years that diagnostic lockouts were eroding their ability to compete. The workforce crisis that followed was predictable. 68% of automotive technicians in the United States are expected to retire by 2030. Only 17% of workers in heavy-duty repair are under 30. In 2025, technician wages in that sector jumped over 14% to a median of $36.50 an hour, nearly 3 times the rate of inflation. Even with that wage growth, more than half of shops reported they were understaffed. Only 60% offer any kind of formal training program. This pattern has moved into the systems that keep people alive and the infrastructure that keeps cities running. Over 60% of large hospitals worldwide have integrated robotic surgical systems, and every one of those machines depends on the original equipment manufacturer for maintenance, firmware updates, and cybersecurity patches. Smart city infrastructure relies on proprietary sensors embedded in bridges, water mains, and power grids, with global spending on smart city technology projected to reach $200 billion. When those sensors fail, you need the original vendor, their software, and their timeline. The Environmental Protection Agency estimates that water infrastructure alone will need $625 billion in repairs and replacements over the next 20 years. A broken proprietary sensor on a water main is a different kind of emergency than a broken valve. For a broken valve, you can fix it locally. For a broken sensor, you wait for a vendor who may have already moved on to the next generation of hardware. The environmental cost keeps compounding. The world generated 62 million metric tons of electronic waste in 2022, enough to fill over 1.5 million trucks, bumper to bumper, around the equator. That number is expected to reach 82 million tons by 2030. The documented recycling rate sits at just over 22%, and it is falling relative to the rate of waste generation. Recovery of rare earth elements, the materials critical to modern electronics and renewable energy, currently meets just 1% of global demand. The economic value of unrecovered materials exceeded $91 billion in a single year. E-waste accounts for 70% of the toxic material in American landfills, leaching lead, mercury, and cadmium into soil and groundwater. Devices sealed with adhesive, soldered RAM, and batteries bonded permanently to the chassis are engineered to become waste on a schedule. Extending the lifespan of electronics by just 5 years could eliminate 10 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions annually. The legal framework that once protected an owner's right to do what they wanted with a purchased product is being quietly rewritten. The first sale doctrine, the principle that once you buy something it is yours to use, resell, or discard, is being sidestepped by end-user license agreements and subscription models. You do not own the software inside your car, you license it. That license prohibits reverse engineering, modification, and unauthorized access. An EULA is a one-way agreement designed to protect the supplier's proprietary code. The subscription model takes this further. When the product itself is offered as a service, with free hardware subsidized by monthly fees, The concept of ownership never enters the equation. You cannot repair something you were never allowed to own. The counter movement is accelerating. By early 2026, legislators had introduced more than 50 right-to-repair bills across 24 states. Colorado passed what is considered the broadest repair law to date, covering farm equipment and powered wheelchairs. Oregon became the first state to explicitly ban parts pairing. At the federal level, the Fair Repair Act proposes requiring manufacturers to make diagnostic and repair information available to independent shops, a change that researchers estimate could save American households $40 billion a year. The European Union has gone further, mandating removable batteries in consumer electronics by 2027 and pushing modular design standards. The American patchwork of state laws leaves vast gaps depending on where you live and what you own. The generation that fixed things understood something fundamental. Ownership meant responsibility. It meant knowing what was under the hood, behind the panel, inside the housing. That knowledge was a form of resilience. When systems failed, local expertise could restore them. Today, when a feature exists as a software subscription rather than a physical component, that model of self-reliance becomes obsolete. Drivers who use independent repair shops still save up to 30% on common work. The tools to reverse this exist. The laws are slowly catching up. The workforce is not. The real question is not whether America can pass enough repair laws to keep up with the pace of digital enclosure. It is whether a country that once defined itself by what its people could build and maintain with their own hands can survive becoming a nation of licensees, renting access to machines they can no longer open, diagnose, or understand.